Call the meeting to order.
All right.
The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from last month's meeting on August 27. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
And seconded. Pastor Sims moves, Denny Bender seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. I don't see anybody on the public agenda, so we'll move on. So that you know, we're gonna do the staff report update after, in order to accommodate the personnel scheduling in connection with the continued review of 19 PSB 2391. We're gonna take that next in order. So that will require us to go back into executive session. So I move that the CRB recess into executive session for 15 minutes. 15 minutes to receive information on case number 19 PSB 2391.
Is that 23 or 32?
It's 2391. It's the one one of them that we reviewed last month, and we held over for the purpose of receiving information related to personnel matters of non-elected personnel. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll go to executive session.
If you could add that this executive session is required to protect the privacy interests of the individual.
Motion is deemed to be amended to required to protect the personnel information or
Privacy interests of an identifiable individual.
privacy interest of an identifiable individual. Everybody okay? Unanimous
Yeah.
consent. All right, got it done. Okay. after a continued review of case number 19 PSB 2391, the board is not taking any specific action with regard to that particular case. The next item on the agenda is the staff report update.
Good afternoon. Complaints for the dates of August 18th through September 13th. We had 17 external complaints, 16 internal complaints. Those consisted of 1 safety violation, 15 improper conduct, 16 procedural violations, and 1 unnecessary force. Year to date, we've had 161 external complaints, 114 internal complaints. And if you look at the classifications as far as what's officers have been most investigated and cited for, you have 46 rude conduct, 25 good judgment, 26 comply with policy, and 28 complete and thorough investigations.
Any questions?
I do. Help me to understand, because this report says complaints received August 18th through September 13th.
Mm-hmm.
But as you look at dates received on some of these complaints, it's outside of that period.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my first question. And which part of this, it looks like the ones that are not green and yellow, but are like white and yellow are the ones that are actually fall within that date that is indicated at the top of the report. So can that be moved and a different title given to the ones that are in green and yellow for clarification?
You're talking about as far as when we receive the complaints?
I think that the one that says complaints received August 18 through September 13 really is.
The ones in white and yellow.
Is
Received
really
or remaining open.
received or remaining open, yeah.
I think a simple fix would be just to retitle the document that complaints received or remaining open August 18th to
Yeah,
September
we can do
13th.
that.
Yeah, that's the confusion.
But see, some of these are not still remaining open, because some of them, there's a finding of sustained or unfounded, that's a closed complaint, but yet it's
Yeah.
still in this, report. In the green and yellow, you have some that are, again, this 20 PSB 2269 sustained, so that's a closed
Right,
complaint.
but it was closed during that time frame. Oh, I see, you're saying it was received in May and closed in August.
There's a legend on the third page of this, that in the green, it says green above black line, closed entries from previous months.
Oh, I see.
The reason why it was on there is because it was closed within that time
Right.
frame.
Right.
Okay. So for clarification, I still think sometimes, rewording maybe, additional wording or something needs to be done.
So just more clarification as far as when the complaints are received and when they're closed?
Received and closed
Okay.
during that
Or
time.
remaining,
That would
yeah.
be.
Received, closed, or remaining open in
Yeah.
that period.
Received, closed, or remaining open for that.
If you want to keep it all as one document.
Yeah.
But the document, maybe perhaps most relevant for us is the complaints closed August 6th to September 8th, because that's the document we use to make
Right.
decisions on what to review.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, August 18th through September 13th, though, is the period we're looking at.
Right, but in terms of the stuff that we can actually look at in terms of the board, it's the last one. That's the ones we have authority to look at in terms of asking for information and making a review.
I thought it was anything closed.
But that's what
Right,
these are.
that's what they are.
Yeah, okay. Let me look at that.
Any other questions? All right, the next item on the agenda, we've had discussion before, or at least referenced before, about the FOP contract. And it comes up in the context of several issues, one of which is the I guess, discipline issue in its interaction. But the captain is going to give us a discussion, a little bit of, we've circulated it before, we have it here. What is this contract and how does it work and how does it impact officer relationships and discipline and things like that?
Well, I'll kind of give you guys kind of a brief overview. I have some bullet points as far as just trying to explain what the FOP contract is and how it works. And then if you guys have some questions, then I'll try and answer those for you. The FOP is the sole and exclusive representative for the purposes of negotiating collectively with the city of Wichita with respect to wages, hours, benefits, and other terms and conditions of employment for all members of the bargaining unit from the rank of crime scene investigator to police sergeant. So like lieutenants, captains, deputy chiefs, and the chief, they're not represented by the FOP bargaining unit. The contracts are generally 3 years, but they have done some for 1 year. It depends on what the manager sees the economic forecast as being. The impact on things, the contract has impact on things like leaves of absence, promotions and transfers, discipline and grievances. And you saw some of the other subsections that they have in the contract as far as what governs that. One of the things that, and it also talks about discipline. And so one of the things that officers have and people that are represented by this contract is Weingarten rights. And that's basically if the discussion that the supervisor has with the officer could in any way lead to the officer being disciplined or terminated or affect the personal working condition, then the covered employee can have his union steward or representative with him during that conversation with the supervisor. You also have something called a Loudermill hearing. So let's say like an officer gets sustained for a serious violation where it's maybe like 15 days, 30 days, or even termination. The purpose of this is to provide the employee with the opportunity to present their side of the story before the employer makes a decision on discipline. So like if we have an officer who's about to get 30 days or be terminated, he has that opportunity to speak in front of the chief and the deputy chief of whatever division that he works in to put his side of the story out even after the investigation has been completed. You also, if you look in that contract, there's steps that are laid out as far as with grievance. The first step that an officer has or somebody represented by this, they can go to HR. If the employee doesn't agree with HR's decision, then the employee has that right to go to arbitration. The city and the union both pay 50% for the arbitrator. Am I correct, Amy? Ms. Magana? As far as 50, on the arbitrator, 50%? Okay. And then once the arbitrator makes a decision, it goes to the manager, and the manager can overturn that. Another option is that if they're not pleased with the manager's decision, they can go to judicial review across the street. And talking to the FOP president last night, he said that's never been done as far as having to go to a district judge to get a review. The union is selective about what they grieve. So just like there's 18,000 municipal law enforcement agencies in the country, each one of these bargaining units are a little bit different. So Wichita's bargaining unit, they don't grieve everything. In Kansas City Police Department, they grieve every single discipline. So coaching and mentoring, minor discipline and all that. So they, in talking to the FOP president last night, I was just getting some background information. Since the new FOP president that we have had here, there's been 3 officers that we've terminated during his tenure, and they haven't grieved any of those. And so they're also committed to not having bad police officers on the police force, but they try and their role is to make sure that we have just cause to discipline an employee and that we're following the standards that have been set throughout. So we wouldn't want to have somebody that is alleged to have been rude conduct, which generally has a written reprimand, and then as opposed to getting a written reprimand, we say we're gonna give you 20 days off. So those are the sort of things that are kind of talked about on that contract. And another thing is that the Fraternal Order of Police can't stop the chief from terminating somebody. That ultimate decision is up to the chief now. Employee has a right that goes through discipline to, file a grievance through and take all those steps that I just laid out. So, but that's kind of the contract in a nutshell. But is there more specific questions that you guys might have about that document?
Does the FOP weigh in either formally or informally in trying to argue about what an officer should be? I use the word charged. I'm not sure that's the right word, but as opposed to conduct unbecoming or rude conduct, do they try to either case specifically or generally, without regard to a specific case, try to define the parameters of that kind of conduct?
No, and I'm a bureau commander at Patrol South, and so if one of my officers are investigated for an allegation, I generally will let the union steward for my bureau know that Officer X is being investigated for conduct unbecoming or whatever, and just let him know. But he doesn't have any say as far as which way the direction goes. I just let him know, just FYI, so a member of your collective bargaining unit may be contacting you if they are a member to let you know that they're under investigation for allegation X or Y or Z.
But in the context of the investigation, when does the representative of the FOP get to be present?
Oh, they get anytime that like those Weingarten rules. Anytime that the supervisor actually meets with that employee to talk to him about something that could result in discipline, that employee has the opportunity to contact his union steward and have him present with him during those conversations.
How often does that happen?
As far as
the officer elects to call his union steward and
it just kind of depends. I mean, not everyone that's on the police department that's eligible to be in the FOP is actually is a member. It's like kind of being probably like at Boeing or something. The union's there for you to be a member of, but unless you actually sign up for it, then you don't do it. But it just kind of depends. I think a lot of time it depends on the severity of the allegation. I mean, sometimes officers are like, I was rude. I don't need an FOP rep, or I did that. But usually on the more serious allegations of discipline, they will contact and we will afford them that opportunity to make sure that they have their steward presence. And it's never something that's like a hindrance. So like generally, like if you have a internal investigation or external investigation that you're looking into, you've already interviewed everybody. The officer is generally the last person that you talk to. So you're able to say that, I'm finishing my investigation. They have an opportunity to look at everything that has been said prior to that interview. And then you select a date that is convenient for them so that they can come in and be interviewed about the allegation under investigation.
Captain, did I?
Have union representation at the interview as well.
Yes.
Okay.
They can have representation at their interview
Right.
as well.
Captain, did I understand you correctly that participation in the FOP is optional for officers?
Correct.
Can you give me any rough estimate as at the patrol level of the representation?
Bob?
I am just guessing, just based on the officers that I had contact with. I'm a lieutenant, I still, part of the fraternal order, I still pay into it.
Mhm.
They do a lot of good in the community and they donate to officers and there's just a lot of good that they do. But as far as membership among the officers, I would be willing to guess, this is based on my contact.
That's all I can expect, yeah.
Is, I would say, probably close to 85%.
A high percentage.
Yeah, high
Okay.
percentage, yes. That is a guess based on contacts.
With regard to the contract itself, is having the contract something that's optional? Because it was a report that came out from Minnesota after the George Floyd situation that department there cut ties with the union or the FOP there. and I guess doesn't have one now going forward. Is that something that is an option for WPD in regards to this contract?
That's probably something that's above this level that I can actually comment about. That is, I know the number one thing, I know when I spoke with the FOP president last night, just to kind of quote him, is that one of the main reasons that they negotiate with the city is wages. And so, that would be that would have to be a decision that the manager and even the law department would have to weigh in as far as how we did business going forward. So, but that would be an option for the lawmakers and the manager going forward. So,
I think a lot of people that do labor relations kind of work thinks it's actually a good thing to have an organization like an FOP or a union, because it provides a structure for dealing with employees that's different than having to just, impose some sort of rule. You want buy-in, and this gives you a structure to do it.
And I've read that also, I guess the other side is that because they are public employees, people express that they did not necessarily need a union because of the status of their employment being public employees paid by taxpayer dollars.
Right. And I can see that. I thought my thought process is on it. I'm a guy that thinks that if the employees can work together with management and come to some agreement on how you're going to handle routine promotions and how you're going to handle discipline procedures, and everybody's in agreement, that's a better way of doing it than just saying management's going to impose and then you got people mad. And so that's just kind of my notion. But
yeah, and as a bureau commander, that I have like 120 people that work for me. The contract really is helpful, like when transfers and when specialty unit positions come up, because the process is the same for everybody. So if you follow me, so as the South captain, we should be doing everything uniform, east, west investigations for when open positions come up. And as you saw in that contract, it even talks about what guidelines that somebody that's in a specialty position can be removed. So it's pretty specific and intensive about those things. And the FOP, we follow the contract, and if we don't follow the contract, the FOP definitely lets us know about it.
other questions? Anybody?
I had a question about the numbers on the back. Where are those?
That's
Is it the pay scale?
yes.
Sometimes it prints funny, but that's pay scale and steps. Those steps are.
So the city of Wichita has pay steps, and you see the different ranges of everyone that's represented in the collective bargaining agreement. So you have the crime scene investigators, the range staff, police recruit, police officer, detectives, and sergeant. So obviously you start at A, and the last step is O.
And just for clarification, is this contract only for the commissioned officers, or they're non-commissioned types of personnel?
Non-commissioned is represented by the Service Employees Union, SEIU. Okay, yeah, got all of them.
Okay.
So the Service Employee Union, I think actually even lieutenants are represented by that body as well.
And that's called Service Employee?
SEIU,
SEIU,
Service.
Service Employees International.
International Union, okay.
Anything else? All right, the next item on the agenda is item number 6, discussion of the factors that WPD or professional standards use to categorize conduct or complaints and how that classification of conduct may impact the review or findings. And I think we can just generally do it or get information, but as we look at the reports that we get each month, we have I'm looking just at the year-to-date statistics. We have classification types, and then we have subclassification types. And the classification types can be excessive force, improper conduct, ongoing, which I'm not sure what that means, procedural violation, safety violation, or unnecessary force. And then we have a whole series of subclassifications, including, committing a crime or whatever, but there's also conduct unbecoming, departmental integrity, down here, use of good judgment, and then there's a whole huge list of types. And I was wondering if the department had a criteria as to how to fit a complaint into a particular type. I mean, some of it's obvious. If there's a shooting or there's a physical force, I mean, that's plainly obvious. But, what's the difference between use of good judgment and conduct unbecoming, departmental integrity? Is there any kind of a written standard on those that is utilized to evaluate?
The policy and procedure manual, I know that Keely is working on getting you guys a copy of all that. She's ill, so she's gonna get you guys a disc about that. So you have the classification type, such as like improper conduct, procedural violations. And so let's say, for instance, an officer may have arrested somebody. When he got his property out, he put his wallet on top of the car. And then when he put him in the car, he drove off and left the wallet on there. And so the guy gets to the jail and said, "Where's my wallet?" And he said, "Well," officer's like, "Well, darn, I left it on top of the car." So that would be carrying custody of someone's property. And so, but you could also, in looking at the investigation, let's say this is kind of how the investigation process works. So, if my officer is alleged to have done something, either my sergeant or lieutenant will let the sergeant or lieutenant, their superior know, then they'll let me know, and then they'll decide. They'll ask me which direction we want to go. So if they tell me that, they think that an officer used unnecessary force, then I say, okay, let's write up the focus letter that you're going to send out to all the witnesses. The officer letting them know that he's going to be investigated possibly for allegation X. And so then the lieutenant who does the investigation basically does a finding of fact. So they will list all of the things that happened that contributed to the incident, and then it's up to the captain and the deputy chief, and then more serious allegations, the chief. So A's, B's, and C's, as far as the violations, those are looked at by the captain and the deputy chief. D's, E's, and F's are looked at by the captain, deputy chief, and the chief. And so once that file is complete, we will look at that, and we make our own determination as far our recommendation as far as whether or not we think, do we think that the officer used unnecessary force? Should have been good judgment, and so we make our recommendations. And so obviously, in that book where we get to write our allegations as far as what our recommendation is, the captain goes first, then the deputy chief. So obviously, I'm the lowest man on the totem pole in that book. So if I can make a recommendation, but the chief could decide that he wants to do something completely different because obviously he's a chief. So it just kind of depends. And so that there's so many different subcategories and different things. And so you may have improper conduct, but there may be another regulation that might fit that allegation. So it's possible for someone to be investigated for something and be sustained for something less serious, and they also could be sustained for something more serious. If that answers your question.
I think so. You said a new term, which I hadn't heard before, focus letter. Is that something that the captain then issues?
No, generally the lieutenant. So like an officer has to be notified. So if someone makes an allegation, like on an external complaint, let's say like Mr. Ross, you made an allegation against Lieutenant Richenberger that he was rude. We would then the lieutenant, whoever his supervisor is or was, would type up a focus letter, and that focus letter would go to that officer, let him know that he's being investigated for the allegation of being rude. And then we'd also would send out witness letters to all the officers that could be called as a witness to attest to the veracity of what it was that had occurred. And now the citizens don't get that. That's just internal. So we get focus letters and we get witness letters that we send out. And then that supervisor starts scheduling interviews. And the focus goes last. And that focus officer also has the opportunity to read all the type reports and everything that's been said prior to his interview.
If I made a complaint, how much information do I get on the types of complaint I can make? Or do I just have to know that going in?
No, if you said that an officer did something improper, it's not, you don't have to know what the specific regulation, that's for us to do. And so basically, you found an application, a complaint form saying that an officer did whatever. We will conduct an investigation, and the lieutenant will send out that focus letter to the officer who's being investigated, and send out to all the people that's going to need to be interviewed. Reference that incident, but you don't have to know anything.
All right, you've described a process that involves people at the bureau, I think, the captain, lieutenant, whatever. When does professional standards get involved, and how do they do the investigation compared to what you just described?
Well, A's, B's, and C's are usually handled in the field or in whatever division bureau that you work in. The D's, E's, and F's, the most serious allegations, those are handled by PSB. And so they still work those cases still the same. And they don't give a recommendation anymore as far as on recommendation of discipline. They just they are the finders of fact. They leave that the discipline recommendations up to the captain, the deputy chief, and the chief. So a long time ago when I was in professional standards as a detective, we would make recommendations as far as on what we thought the discipline should be. But they changed that maybe like a year or two ago. Now they're just finders of fact. So they don't make any recommendation one way or the other. They just tell what happened, and then it's up to the commanders to determine what discipline should be levied.
Question then, on this number 6, determination of classification or incidents of complaints, how you classify them. When a citizen makes a complaint, they allege a certain action. And it seems like it's consistent throughout here that, like the one we reviewed in executive session, the citizen alleged excessive or unnecessary force. We have on here that we're going to review later, where the citizen alleges being racially profiled, and so on and so forth. My question is, and it's in the minutes, that on my complaint I alleged specifically wrongful or unlawful arrest, but that's not how it was worded. Mm-hmm. It's classified differently. Mm-hmm. Why is it? And I was told that wouldn't be changed. Mm-hmm. And so I'd like to know why, when all these others, you have the citizens' actual allegations stated, but in mine, that's not the case. Mm-hmm. So that's my question.
Well, you can allege that, I guess what I want to say is that whatever it is that you allege, everything should be covered in the final investigation. So you could say, an officer was rude, and we can say that to complain allege that the officer was rude, and then we end up finding that maybe he took a wallet, or maybe he was did something else, or find some other allegations. So what's written on that initial allegation should also be covered in the investigation as by the investigator.
I'm aware. I'm just saying you're not changing the citizen's allegation. If the citizen alleged officer was rude, in your conclusion you find something different, you still did not change or reclassify that citizen's original allegation. And so, but in my case, it seems to be different. Why is the exception being made for me, I'm wondering, whereas it wasn't for all of these previous in the past. And mistakes can be made, I understand that. Newspapers print retractions all the time that they made a mistake. In my case, I clearly stated a mistake was made, things were stated incorrectly. But again, I was told that it wouldn't be corrected. And I have a problem with that, and I want to know why that's the case.
You know, and I wasn't with this body when your case it started, I do believe, and I think that the chief had gave a finding, and I think the next step for you in that process, if you like, is to go to the city manager's review board to have it reviewed by them, if that's the case, course that you'd like to take.
Yeah, that still doesn't answer my question, and that is planned. But with regard to the changing of my allegation, okay, to specifically reflect.
Yeah, we do need to be a little bit careful, because if this is a case review of an actual case, we have to do it in executive session.
Yeah, I'm not asking a review of it at this time. The time will come for that. We've already got others ahead of that. I'm just asking, again, my question is, I alleged one thing, all right, and I stated that on the report, it wasn't stated correctly.
Why don't we ask, if there's an answer to this question that can be done as a matter of policy without review I'm reluctant to have continued discussion of an individual case outside of the parameters of the ordinance, which says it has to be exec session. So as a matter of policy, I would assume that the sheets we get, if rude conduct is alleged, we're told rude conduct is alleged, and then there's a series of findings. That's what we've been told, but you guys can deal with that in that context without regard to this particular case.
Am I able to answer that question? And I've worked with Pastor Sims on this question. And so what professional standards does is they use a language that encompasses everything. For example, if someone alleges that they were arrested without probable cause or unlawfully arrested, for example, professional standards may put in there in the disposition sheet. They may use language such as the complainant alleged that there were policy and procedure violations, or something of that nature. And so it's things that encompass everything, because obviously if we don't follow policy and procedure, or if we unlawfully arrest someone, we're violating policy and procedure by not finding probable cause to arrest that person. So they try to encompass language, or they try to use language that encompasses everything to simplify it instead of using the complaint. Because I don't think I've ever seen where they use the complainant's their exact words, because sometimes the wording leaves much to the imagination sometimes. So we try to, I'm sorry, go ahead,
Well,
Pastor
you
Sims.
just said you don't think you've ever seen where they use the complainant's actually words. We went into an executive session where they used the complainant's actual words. He alleged that there was unnecessary or excessive force. There's other complaints on here where they use the complainant's actual words.
Well, exactly.
So for that statement to be made, Lieutenant Richenberger, I'm sorry, that's outrageous to me.
Well, and what I'm referring to is this disposition form. And that's where the professional standards language is used. I think that's what you're asking about.
And
Am I
again,
correct in that?
And again, that's a problem I have, is that professional standards is using language other than the complainants. Maybe that's okay in their conclusion, okay, but in the origin of the complaint, all right, there is something that complainant is alleging, okay, that starts that whole investigation off, and that needs to be clearly stated in the outset, not just the PSB conclusionary types of language.
I assume that when a complaint is made, there is the focus letter identifies how the department is characterizing it, perhaps using language that the department regularly uses to describe the kind of conduct as opposed to the individual complainant's language. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, when the complaint letter is sent out, or the focus letter is sent out to the officers to notify them that they're the focus of an internal administrative investigation, they won't give everything word for word, but they will use language that, such as on this date and time, a complaint alleges that that you failed to follow proper policy and procedure on this specific car stop, and they may put a little bit more detail, but they keep it fairly simple versus a complaint that could be 1 or 2 pages long. They can't fit all that into the letter, so they try to use language that encompasses the complaint.
So
It gives an over.
So in the context then of all the decision makers having the relevant information, I would assume that focus letter ultimately is accompanied by a copy of interviews and the complaint when it goes to the captain and to the deputy chief and to the chief, so that all of the information is available at that point.
When it gets to that level, it's going to have everything in there. Matter of fact, it's going to have the original complaint, and like I said, the focus letter is just a very brief letter telling the officer, giving them, letting them know what violation that they're being investigated for and what incident. It gives them a date and time.
I guess my point then is that the complainant's version and language is always part of the packet.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so that when it gets reviewed up to whatever level, all of that information would be available so everybody knows what the original complaint was.
Yes, and it will have, for example, it'll have the original complaint in there that was handwritten, typed, or even in some cases called in. So it'll have all that information in the book. Well, we call it an investigation book at some point. And times it gets pretty full. So, did I answer that?
Yes, you did, thank you.
Okay.
Pastor Sims, any? Yeah,
Well, again, that regarding what is sent to the officer is something that's really off the subject as relates to what the citizen, okay, is received. And what we get, again, on these reports, okay, is the citizen's allegation. Look at the reports. Okay, and so I just asked for accuracy with regard to my exact allegation because it was clearly misinforming the board and incorrect information. Yeah, I was told that wouldn't be changed.
Anything further? We have another executive session we need to go to.
So your concern is that they're changing the complaint?
Changing my allegation.
Changing your allegation, in other words, let's say you said the guy was rude and they changed that?
Well, in my case, I never said the officers were rude, but that's what they put.
Oh, okay.
I said.
Okay, I got you.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. I move that the Citizen Review Board recess to executive session for 30 minutes to receive information on case numbers 18 PSB 3291, subject of which is identified in the agenda, and 20 PSB 2126, the subject of which is identified in the agenda. I make this motion because it relates to personnel matters of non-elected persons and matters related to privacy interests, and that it would be, I think that's it. And we will return it at about 6 p.m. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes. We're now in executive. After reviewing the two cases, the board takes no action, makes no recommendations. Next item on the agenda is new business. I am not aware of any new business. Anybody else have any new business?
Next meeting date.
We need to set the next meeting. We typically do the fourth Thursday, so that would be the 22nd. Is everybody good on the 22nd of October? Sure I have that right, yeah. We all good? Okay, why don't we, then the next meeting will be on October 22nd. Will it be here again, probably?
Yes.
Okay.
And can we know where we're at in the list of all of those cases that you brought up for us to review, where we're at
I
in
think
that
we're
list?
caught up, or we?
I think we have maybe four more cases that we're
okay.
behind, so.
And Stephanie asked me about 20 PSB 3588.
3588?
No, what, yeah. 3588 is apparently a domestic violence case. So,
Okay, we'll add that to the list.
And I would like mine added to the list, 20 PSB 1214.
all right.
20 PSB what?
1214.
All right,
Okay.
all right. Any other new business? Yes, Sean?
Jay, I wanted to share, I had an experience to go and interview a new police recruit. I was asked, I'm not sure by what officer asked me, but I went and it was, I think it was about a 2-hour interview with about 4 recruits. So I know they look for folks to do those from the community, and I'm not sure, I'm guessing my name got given to them because I'm on this board, but just in case you get the opportunity, I would say you should try it. It was very interesting, and maybe you all have already. This is my first time. And if you did, I thought maybe that might be interesting for us to look at some of the questions that they ask and, you know, how they interview and the process. So, but yeah, if that opportunity, if you're interested, I'm sure we can probably put our names in a hat and they'll probably call us, so.
All right.
I have a question of the captain. It's
Yes.
more out of curiosity than germane to our discussions. But I believe there is an officer who potentially is facing a felony charge, but that the cooperating agency for the investigation was the Goddard Police Department rather than the Sheriff's Department. Is that
Well,
unusual?
it's a misdemeanor.
Misdemeanor?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And we do have an MOU with some of the surrounding agencies, Sedgwick
So it's
County.
not just the sheriff?
Yes,
Other agencies can review?
Correct.
Okay.
Anything else?
I just want to offer a commendation to Captain Nicholson and the rest of the police staff for their aid, assistance, and support to the CRB. I've been on the board before where it was like police staff were more focused on kind of bossing and controlling the maybe actions or discussions or decisions of the board, and I just want to appreciate the staff, the Wichita police staff, for their aid, assistance, and support to the board.
Agreed.
Yes, agreed.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.